Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I am your host, Randi-lee. On today's episode, we're going to be talking to Anne Feustel. Welcome, Anne. So excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on the show.
All right. First, I know a little bit about you, but tell everybody else a little bit about you.
Sure. So I'm Anne Feustel, and I'm the author of the book, Our Favorite Movies, How Films Affect Our Mental Health. And I'm also an editor, writer, data entry tech, and transcriber, and have my own business called Writing Wisely.
Nice. What is like your favorite hobby that can't be writing?
It can't be writing. Can it be watching movies?
That's your job. No, because that's still kind of your job.
Yeah.
It has to be something else.
Okay, probably my favorite hobby outside of the obvious things would be spending time with my cat and my dogs.
So you said cat, but then dogs plural. So how many do you have?
So I have one cat and then I have two dogs.
I have cats and dogs too, so I get you. I love them. All right, so let's talk about the juicy part of the episode, which is mental health. Can you share with us what mental health you've been dealing with?
Sure. So I have generalized anxiety disorder and bipolar disorder. And yeah, this past year has definitely had its ups and downs. And I got pretty bad last fall. But I am doing a lot better thanks to my therapist and just the different things I do for self-care, and I've done some group therapy over that time as well.
Wonderful. So tell us how general anxiety affects you, because it can affect everybody a little bit different.
Sure. So it affects me in that I just sort of have what's called free floating anxiety, where it's just sort of, it's there often sort of in the ether in the background a lot, and then it'll go foreground more lately, more in the last year. I've been dealing with more anxiety, but a lot of times with that, it just means that I worry about a lot of different things. And so it's sort of, I have anxiety about different things. For instance, thinking about going back out into the real world, what's going to happen, once it's safer to be engaged in society more. Am I going to be able to know sort of like, can I get back in the groove of being social and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good point, because we haven't been very social for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
And how does your bipolar affect you? Not everybody knows very much about that one.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know much about bipolar disorder, it's basically where you're dealing with a lot of highs and lows. So most people know what depression is, so I won't go into that so much. But with the mania, you can experience mania, which is like an extreme euphoria. You can feel out of control. You can do what's called like word salad, where you're saying things that don't really make much sense. Being very impulsive and things like that. And just, just being, it's like you're on a super high. And then you can also have things like hypomania, which is sort of the in-between kind of state where you're feeling like you have a lot of energy, and that you can be very creative in that, and also in the mania, but it's a little bit more subdued than the super high highs.
Okay. And bipolar, you can almost swing without any kind of notice, right?
Right. Yeah, you can swing without notice. There's different times. There's rapid cycling, a type of bipolar where it's you go in between the depression and mania very quickly. And then other types where it's more of a long period of one or the other.
Okay.
And a lot of times, if you go into mania, you're going to go into depression right afterwards.
Okay. And when were you diagnosed with that?
So I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 22 and generalized anxiety disorder, I believe about 20.
Okay. And I'm assuming you'll have to tell us that you were experiencing these things even growing up before the diagnosis happened.
Right. I definitely was experiencing depression since age 10, at least. I was about age 10 when I first started thinking about suicide. And
Young.
then yeah, yeah, definitely. And the anxiety I think was around the same time.
Mhm. Was there any kind of catalyst behind it when you were 10?
You know, I think, a lot of people ask me that, and my best guess is bullying.
Okay.
I went through a lot of bullying when I was a kid. My weight was, I've always, been overweight even as a kid. And so that was a big part of it. And also I was just like weird. I've always been like a little bit eccentric, a little bit weird. Um yeah.
But as a
I was
kid,
hoping you
that's
would be.
necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
You're hoping
I
it was
think it's awesome now. Like I embrace my weirdness now, but then when you're a kid, that's not really something you usually do. So
no. Kids are mean.
yeah, exactly.
Like I don't know
So
if as a kid I'd have the self-confidence to wear blue lipstick, but now I'm like, I love it. I love it.
but yeah, so that is my journey so far.
Okay. And I haven't had too many guests talk about bullying, so I want to stay here for a little bit and kind of talk about that. What did you do to try and stop the bullies?
um that's a good question. I don't know if there's anything. I mean, I think, I think back to like middle school and sort of trying to talk back or use logic or things like that.
Mhm.
Nothing really worked. I might have told on some bullies at some point. I don't have that's a good question, and I don't have a whole lot of memories for that.
Yeah, I don't have too many memories of what I did either because I was also bullied. Other than the one story that I share in my one book, um, where in grade 5 the girl was very mean. If you want the whole story, you got to read the book. But the girl was very mean, and oh, there's your kitty.
Yep,
And
there he is.
and I ended up after this constant bullying of her and getting other people kind of on her side, people who I had known my whole life, and I picked up a rock at recess and I chucked it at her because I didn't know what else to do. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand is that if kids are being bullied, we don't know as kids what to do. We haven't learned coping skills. Like now, if somebody was to say something to me, I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever, whatever. Like I don't care. I let it roll off me. Their opinion of me has no bearing on my life.
Right,
As a kid, other people's opinions are kind of everything, which I mean, they shouldn't be, but that is how we interpret them.
right, exactly.
Yeah. So I get that. And my youngest, he was bullied constantly, kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2. And it was heartbreaking because you tell your kid, at least where I am, we always say, you got to tell the teacher, tell an adult, right? That's what all the commercials say to do. Tell a grown up. So he told me,
Mm-hmm.
he told the teacher, nothing changed. So
Yeah.
I can totally understand how you're like, what did I do? What could you have done, right? And I think it's not about the victim doing something different because I feel like as the victims, we don't have the coping skills. If we have told an adult, which a lot of people do, we don't see a result. So I think it comes from teaching the bullies not to be bullies.
Right, exactly. Exactly. It's super important because, this has a lot of impact on kids' lives. I mean, there are kids who die by suicide. There are kids who attempt or have the suicidal thoughts
Exactly.
because of this.
And there's another component to that that just popped into my head, is that you have the victim, we have the bully, but then we have all these other people around that witness it. So like in my case, like I was saying, the bully eventually got the other kids to kind of tease and sing along with the mean words that she was saying. Well, at the beginning, they were all just bystanders. So if you are around somebody who's bullying, something that you can do, or at least try, is stand by the victim's side, right?
Right.
Stand by and say, no, you can't pick on Anne. Anne's chill. Like, what you doing? And standing up for other people. And that can be a really hard thing. Because sometimes that means you're drawing the attention to yourself. But a lot of times, if you just stand up against somebody who is bullying, they just stop sometimes.
I find though it depends on who it is who stands up.
Yes.
Because if it's the other kids who are also been bullied, it's just that bully is picking, you've got XYZ kids, the bully, bullies XYZ kids all the time. But if Z kid is getting bullied and then X kid is telling them not to, they're not going to listen to that kid. They're
No,
going to listen to the more popular ones, the ones
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, it has to be the popular kids to be like, you're not being cool, and then things can change.
Because I remember sticking up for my friends all the time. They were being bullied, but they weren't listening to me.
No, exactly. So that's a really good point. And so I don't have the answers of how to stop bullying. I just want to bring awareness that is a really big issue. And if somebody has a better idea of what to do or skills that you can use, then please share them with others, because we are waiting for them. Because I know, struggling just as a parent of a kid who was bullied, it's a big struggle, and it's hard to know what is right. And so you had mentioned that for some kids, it can bring thoughts of suicide or even suicide attempts. Was that something that crossed your mind?
Yeah. That was definitely something where, as a kid, as a teenager, bullying and just negative talk, body shaming, that kind of thing definitely affected me in that way. Definitely had the suicidal thoughts around that.
And did you have any kind of coping skill at that time to deal with those?
Watching movies has always been my coping skill since I was a kid.
Coping skill.
I definitely used watching movies and reading. Reading was another big one for me. Always has been. So those were the two things.
You can use that as a hobby, reading, because I mean, it's sort of part of your job, but not nearly as much as writing.
Yeah, I know. Reading has saved my life. I don't even know how many times.
Good. And so shifting forward a little bit, we're going to move through those teenage years, unless you've got something else to share specific to teenage years, and move to the 20s, 22, right? Because that's when you were saying that you got diagnosed with these things. How did that come about?
Right. So I had a suicide attempt in college, and I was hospitalized, and ended up where they weren't sure. They thought I had bipolar disorder, but they weren't like completely sure about it. And then I had been hospitalized, I think, 3 times between my sophomore year and the summer after my senior year.
Oh, wow.
So it was my senior year when I finally got the for sure diagnosis that I have bipolar disorder and generalized anxiety disorder.
Okay. And having gotten that diagnosis, how has that impacted your life?
So it's just sort of helped me understand sort of like what are the symptoms that I'm dealing with and sort of what is my baseline, that kind of thing. It's really all about taking medication for it. That's definitely affected me, and just making sure I take care of myself and I do the kind of things that I need to do to, live in the world and live symptom free as much as possible, even though that's hard.
Yeah. I like the way that you said that, symptom free, because mental health isn't something that we can just get rid of. It's a part of us, but we can totally live with it and manage it. So I like the way
Exactly.
that you said that. And you mentioned group therapy. You are the first guest on the show that has mentioned group therapy. So can you tell us what that kind of looks like, what it felt like?
Sure. So I've done various group therapy over the years. I most recently did the best therapy I've done recently is intensive outpatient therapy, and that's a therapy where you're in. I did it all virtual, but you're in a group, in person or virtual, for several hours every day or several hours several times a week.
Okay.
And you're just really getting into, what's going on, what are the skills I need right now. So you could have different types of therapy, different types of skills. There's things like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, things like that. But for me, it's about the camaraderie with the different people in the group. And I've also done things that are group therapy-ish, like wellness classes,
Okay.
things like that. So some of the wellness classes I've been in, that's another type of therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. And that's sort of what you might think about. It's about accepting yourself for who you are and committing to certain things like goals. But it's all about also sort of letting your thoughts be thoughts and not getting down on yourself for what you're thinking.
Oh,
But sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that's good.
Yeah,
Letting be thoughts. Yeah.
exactly. And letting your emotions be your emotions,
Mhm.
not trying to shame yourself or push yourself into feeling something or stop yourself from feeling something. That's important.
I
Um,
like that, stopping yourself from feeling something. So I'm just gonna quickly steal your thunder for a moment. Um, so our emotions and this, you know, boys don't cry, right?
mm,
And
mm,
have thick skin. Well, if that's what you're doing, if you're always just putting on a thick skin and hiding your emotions, and not to say that girls can't do it either. I mean, I did it all the time. But it's that saying of boys don't cry. That's why it came to mind first. But if you don't let your emotions be your emotions, like you said, then we just kind of bottle them up. And what happens when you bottle something? So let's think of pop, for instance. We have this pop bottle and we are really upset. So it shakes. But we got over it. So now it's stopped again. It's just chilling. And then something else in life happens and we have some negative self-talk. So it's shaken up again. Something like this. And then we get over it and it stops again. So it's been shaken up twice. And then something else happens and we're really sad, but we don't want to cry because guys don't cry. So we're shaking it up. Or girls. So we're shaking it up, shaking it up. And then after however many times it gets shaken up, it goes and explodes.
mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm.
have to accept the fact that you have emotions. We're human beings, we have emotions, and it is okay to express them. Now, sometimes we have to learn positive ways of expression. So, my youngest has autism, and expressing emotions when he was younger was throwing things and yelling and hitting. He is now he's 14, and he has learned better coping skills and better ways of expressing his emotions, right? So, we got to learn these skills and let them be expressed. I mean, in certain situations, you may not want to, break down crying. Like, say you're at work, maybe you don't want to break down crying, but that doesn't mean that you can't, after work, go home and have a little cry if you need to. Right?
Or cry in the bathroom a little bit.
I did that before. Splash some water on your face after. I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I just
No, no, I love it. Thank you for stealing my thunder because no, that's a great analogy and it's completely true. And it really makes me think of my favorite movie one of the ones I put in the book is Inside Out. Have you seen that?
yes. Oh my goodness, my kid loved it. I loved it too, but because my kid loved it, we watched it like a bajillion times. It's a good one.
Yeah, so for people who are listening who haven't seen Inside Out, it's basically the story of this 11-year-old girl named Riley, and her family moves from Minnesota to San Francisco, and she has to deal with not have it. Well, she has to deal with missing her home and missing her friends, and inside of her mind are her 5 emotions: joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear. And joy and sadness get lost in her mind. And so what's it like when you can't feel joy or sadness?
Yeah. So that was such a good movie, and I think it teaches emotions really well. They did a really good job with that movie.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's really good for kids to get the message of that movie, that it's normal. Well, I don't like the word normal. It's average. It's typical
Yeah.
for everyone to feel those 5 emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can't tap into one of your emotions
Yeah.
for whatever reason. And sometimes you just got to give yourself some time or find ways to help you tap into those emotions.
That's such a good point. And that was a great movie, that reference. And if you haven't seen it yet, go see it.
Yes.
It's a big secret. Go see it. So now, and I'm not assuming your age, but I am assuming that you've lived with this diagnosis for a little bit now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what have you learned over these years works the best for you?
Right. So yeah, I'm 40 now. And what works the best, like for self-care or
Whatever you think works the best for you, whether it's self care or a therapist or whatever works for you.
I think therapy is the thing that really works for me the best. I think I've got, like I said before, I've got a great therapist now, and it's just so important to have somebody to talk to you about things and to spitball what's going on and finding things that I can do that I haven't been doing already, to go forward.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And actually, I love the way that you just said somebody to spitball with, because I've been dealing with some stuff in my life. I won't really get into it, but I'm thinking I need to call up my therapist again and do that, what you're saying, spitballing, because sometimes what's going on in my brain is, doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to me. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody who's listening right now, but it's not, my brain is saying, this is what you need to do. But then the situation that I'm in goes, you can't do that. So how do I do what my brain wants me to do when the situation says, no, you can't? And so then
Right.
I'm battling this inner battle in my brain of what to do or how to go about it. And it's just like a constant bombardment, which will turn into negative self-talk, which you've mentioned before. And all of a sudden, you're a bad person because you can't do what you said that you were going to do or what you think you need to do, and kind of spirals down from there.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think if you think that it's a good idea to talk to the therapist, I always say go for it. I think anyone, if they're feeling that way, I know it for some people they can't afford therapy, or they're having a lot of trouble finding a therapist that works with their insurance.
Yeah.
And for the folks out there who have that, I always say go to psychologytoday.com,
Yeah.
because that's a great way to find a therapist who either takes your insurance or goes on a sliding scale, what have you.
And I like that website too, because I don't know if it's worldwide, but I know that it definitely covers America and Canada, because I've used it to find people in Canada.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I've just been, I just put in my own zip code, or if I'm looking for somebody else, put in their zip code. So I haven't tried
Yeah.
anyone outside of the US.
Yeah. And I just know because I'm in Canada and I've used it. So I don't know if it is, say if you were in Europe or whatever, but yeah, it's a great resource. And a lot of stuff is now virtual. So it can be a little easier too to be able to access it sometimes.
Exactly, exactly. That's been one thing that I really liked, is to be able to see my therapist from my house.
Yeah. Yeah, it saves me. So my therapist is about a 30-minute drive, which is not far, but it's a 30-minute drive there and a 30-minute drive back. So it's another hour, which I mean, I do it because I clearly need to go talk to her. But I mean, if I can save myself that hour, then woo.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, my therapist is in a she's about 20 to 25 minutes away from me,
Yeah.
and a part of town that I'm not crazy about driving in. So
There you go. Yeah. So what would you tell somebody who's listening right now who's dealing with their own mental health?
I would tell that person that you're not alone, that there's nothing wrong with you, you're just dealing with something. Um, that it's important to find things that are comforting to you that you can do, um, and not things that you feel you have to do or that you push yourself to do, but find things that you enjoy.
Uh,
That's a huge deal because a lot of people think, oh, I got to do yoga and I got to exercise for 2 hours and,
mhm.
that kind of thing. But I really do think that finding things for you and finding a good therapist is important, and just finding people who are there to support you.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. One thing that I didn't ask you that I really wanted to, because I saw you kind of mention it in your pre-questions, was did you experience stigma around your mental health?
Yeah, no, I've definitely experienced that. I know I've lost friends over it, and um, my behavior. I was in a program at a local college to get a bachelor's in social work, to eventually get a master's in social work, and they asked me not to come back.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that would be hard.
yeah, I was not that happy about it, but I felt at the time like I was having enough issues that maybe it was the right choice, and I didn't really want to fight them on that.
Yeah.
But I feel like there was definitely stigma around that. Like if I had a physical health issue, would they have treated me the same way?
Hmm.
So that would be sort of the two things, but definitely I've had people react negatively around the mental health issue, or I've witnessed somebody. I talk about in my book. There was a person who I met at a party who started talking about how all these teenagers were just pretending to have mental health issues because I
Mm.
thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, well, how do you know that that is what's happening? You don't know for sure what's going on with these kids, and these kids need attention if they're talking about that kind of stuff, even if they don't necessarily have the symptoms they say they do. These kids need some kind of support.
Yeah.
So, um, and I've also witnessed, um, people when I've been in the hospital, different therapists have definitely have a stigma that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, especially if they're the doctor you're dealing with, that makes it very difficult to talk to them and get proper help.
Exactly. So I'm saying this is a minority of the mental health workers I've worked with,
Hmm.
but there are some out there.
Yeah, yeah. And it could be that they're burnt out over the years and stuff, but then maybe it's time to switch jobs.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so when you experience the stigma, is there something that you do to try to overcome it?
Um, I think when I was younger, it was harder to deal with, in my early to mid 20s, once I had the diagnosis. I was kind of flailing around when it came to how to deal with people who were doing that.
Hmm.
But as I got older, I've just been sticking up for myself, and I've been sticking up for others more when
Good.
it comes to when I see or hear that happening.
And I think
So,
that's a really good point. When we're younger, just like the bullying thing, right? When we're younger,
mhm,
we don't know. We don't know ourselves well enough to even know what our diagnosis might even mean or how it affects us. And it's worrisome because when you're younger, you want to be, and I'm with you, I don't really like the word normal, but you want to be typical. You want to be like everybody else. But then as we get older, we embrace our silliness, our eccentricities, um, who we really are, right? And so it does
mhm.
become easier. I think I agree with you. As we get older, it's easier to stand up to people and say, yeah, and what is wrong with somebody who has bipolar? What is wrong with somebody who has anxiety?
Right.
And they don't usually have a very good answer if they have an answer.
You know, Anger is an emotion I have trouble with, partially because my parents, um, uh, just a house I grew up in, anger was sort of like the worst emotion to
Okay.
have. You're not supposed to be angry, you're not supposed to be in conflict,
Yeah.
you need to get along and all that kind of stuff, or at least that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
And so I don't get angry very often, or at least not at people.
Mhm.
I still have that emotion inside of me, but
Yeah.
I try to suppress it.
Mhm.
Um, so, but when somebody gets, negative about people with mental health issues, that's when I sometimes lash out a little bit.
When your pop can burst.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we are just about out of time. So tell everybody, what is the name of your book that you've been talking about?
Sure. So the book is called Our Favorite Movies: How Films Affect Our Mental Health, and it's available on Amazon.
Wonderful, because that was going to be my next question. And then where can people find you? Are you on social media? Can we follow you?
Sure. My Facebook page is Writing Wisely, and my Instagram is Ann Feustel Author, and you can find me on LinkedIn under Ann Feustel.
Wonderful. And all of those links will be in the description below. So be sure to click and give Anne a follow. Check out her book because, I mean, movies are amazing, especially Inside Out. So glad you brought that one up. And thank you so very much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. I had a lot of fun, and
What a great guest she was. I had so much fun. We talked about so many things, bullying and group therapy and bipolar. It was great to be able to talk about things that we haven't explored very much on the show yet. And of course, remember that all of her links are in the description down below. So give her a follow on everything. And if you have not, hit that subscribe button for the Right or Die show. Show us a little bit of love that way. Share the video out to everybody. We have a message that needs to be heard about ending the stigma with mental health. So please help us spread that word. And of course, if you did want to support the channel, we have a Patreon as well as a merch store with some very cool designs if you're interested. And remember that the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly